Financial Modeling, Topic 3, Section 4, Calculating Portfolio Volatility Using Matrix Multiplication. Now, we just did this formula in the last section by creating a bunch of, several matrices in Excel, or arrays in Excel, and I did Wi, Wj, sigma, ij. However, there's one shortcut I often use, or almost always use, when calculating portfolio standard deviation. What I do is I do a matrix calculation or multiplication of the transpose of the weights times the covariance matrix times the weights. When I do that, that's going to give me my portfolio variance. So what does this mean? If I take my weights and convert them into a row, a 1 by n, that's W transpose, and I multiply times all my covariance terms, my covariance matrix, that's an n by n, it's always a square matrix. I can do that because that's a 1 by n times an n by n. The resulting matrix is a 1 by n, which then has all the weights distributed to the correct covariance terms. Now, to get the weights in there the second time in the right place, I then multiply that resulting 1 by n times the the column vector of weights. That's an n by 1. Inner dimensions are the same. Outer dimensions are 1. And what that's going to do, it's going to put the weights in the second time, and it's going to give me that Wi, Wj, sigma, ij, and it's going to be one single number since the outer dimensions are 1. That formula, how I'm going to write it in Excel, is going to be n mult transpose W, SW to the 1/2 power to turn it into a standard deviation. This inner m mult takes the transpose of W times S. This other m mult then takes the resulting matrix and multiplies times W again. So let's go ahead and do that in Excel. Equals m mult transpose W covariance matrix S W to the 1/2 power, and there's my 1620. So what it turns out is I don't actually need to do this last step. I simply need to calculate a covariance matrix, get a vector of weights, and calculate portfolio standard deviation. Last thing I want to talk about is I could have done this calculation one other way, and that is I could have gone directly from portfolio returns here. Let me go back to the PowerPoint here. I could have gone from portfolio returns and in not used correlation, I could have just used Excel's covariance tool in data analysis and directly calculated covariance terms. Then added the weights and calculated portfolio standard deviation. Here's why I didn't do that. I wanted to use the historical correlations, but I wanted to use my own standard deviations that in this case are based on implied volatilities using Black-Scholes model. So what it does, it combines the historical correlations with my implied vols to create these covariance terms, which then calculate my portfolio standard deviation. So that's why I calculated a correlation matrix and combined them with these standard deviations and did not simply use the covariance tool. Now, if you use the covariance tool and you skip these steps here, what you are basically doing is combining the historical correlations and just the historical standard deviations. You're not building in any, you're not using your own standard deviation estimates. All right, so in this topic, we calculated the portfolio volatility, using matrix multiplication.